everybody back out there and it all happens again.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I'm pleased to hear that. Because obviously I have mixed emotions about Tyson's behaviour over the last 12 months, but never doubted the ability of the fighter. So I'm really pleased that when adversities come knocking, if the claims that he's made over the years that he is the best heavyweight are to be backed up, he needs to take this rematch. He needs to come through adversity and redeem himself in the same way that Lennox Lewis did, same way that Mike Tyson did, and the same way that Muhammad Ali did at times when they suffered losses. So I'm really pleased to hear that.
Well, before you ask me any more questions, I want to answer what Simon said there about his behaviour. And I've got to be honest, and you know, Simon and I, we have lots of discussions and so forth, and we agree on a lot of things, and there's things I don't agree on, and him vice versa.
Indeed.
You know, Tyson is bipolar. And if you go on the NHS website, and you're talking about the things that are said, you look on there and you look at the symptoms, and bipolar, by the way, has been the word for the last few years on manic depressive, which is a mental illness, a serious mental illness. And it includes things like mania, feeling very happy, elated, overjoyed, talking quickly, feeling full of energy, easily irritated or agitated, dealing with suicidal feelings, which without treatment, they may get stronger, as they did with him, because he was very close to that. Self-harm, you know, not just physical self-harm, mental self-harm. And you should avoid drugs and alcohol. And as you know, it was well documented, especially when some of these things were said, which were attributed to him, which some were said and some would, I think, were manipulated. But that's a fact. And then, which I think is something that's quite important for somebody who has bipolar, because my brother committed suicide, as I mentioned to you before, Simon.
Yeah.
And he was borderline schizophrenic and suffering from this. And that's why I take exception to what's going down here and how easy and what these throwaway lines are about thuggish behaviour. It says making decisions or saying things that are out of character and others may see as risky or harmful. So that's what he's got, bipolar. What he hasn't done, what thugs do, thugs hit people. He's not hit anybody. Things have been said, a couple of things have been said and so forth, because you say what's in your head. I might, or you might, because we have maybe a bit of filter sometimes, say things to each other.
I understand, Frank, but does this mean that when Tyson and those around him go off with insulting and disrespectful and diminishing comments about others, everyone's just got to accept it and say, okay, Tyson Fury's got bipolar, so we just price that in. When he starts insulting people, which he does regularly, when he starts diminishing people and making personal observations about people, which he does regularly, everyone's just got to say we all must feel sorry for Tyson because he's got bipolar, and all the acolytes around him, all his management team that come out with the same sort of nonsense as well, his father's behaviour over in Saudi, everyone's just got to sit there and say, no, Tyson, we all must now price that into our thinking and give him a pass on it, Frank.
No one's saying that at all.
Well, you kind of are.
And as regarding the team, I mean, you can only talk, when you say management, he only has one manager and he only has one dad. And that, whatever they say, that's not Tyson's saying. But whatever Tyson says...
You are judged by the company you keep, Frank,
well,
aren't
you
you?
asked me, let me answer the question you just asked. No, you haven't got to do that. But you should prefix it by saying he's bipolar. And what's in his head, he says, like at the end of the fight, Happy New Year. No one actually said at the end of the fight, and any of the reports, hardly any of the reports I've seen, except the guys who've been waiting to dig their knives into him, no one has said how they embraced each other, the fighters, how Tyson must have kissed him about 3 times.
Frank, I'll give you the alternate view on this. The praise for Tyson Fury over the years from certain quarters has been quite significant. And even in the article that I wrote last week, which you responded to, and one of these digital guys shoved a proportion of it under your nose and you responded to it, referred to him as charismatic, enigmatic, charming, engaging. All of those are taken as a given. And the moment criticism comes, oh, hang on a second, that's unfair. And that's what people get a bit fed up with.
Well, I'll get fed up with what you say when the headlines talks about thuggery.
Well, there was thuggery in Saudi.
That's what the headlines say.
The language that he uses is thuggish and boorish. It is overbearing and unpalatable.
He's never, to my knowledge, been a thug outside the ring to anybody. Who's he hit?
Well, depends what you
He'd be
define
arrested if
thuggery
he
as.
was hit. None of that's happened.
Depends what you're
is
taking.
the
You're taking exception.
The man is an absolute consummate warrior. You couldn't leave anything in the ring more than he does in every one of these fights.
And no one's questioned that, Frank, have they?
Well, they are. Some people are dismissive of it. And dismissive.
Well, they're not, Frank, and you've alighted upon this, and you're being remarkably defensive of it, and I understand to some extent why. But I don't feel that what you're pushing back against is unfair comment, because it is. I do hear you that certain people are jumping on the agenda because he's lost now and they can really stick the boot in, and I get that and I understand that. But I also think that there's an equitability and fairness. I think the way that, for example, if we're going to talk about vested interest, I think the way that Tyson'S engaged and the ban that's been put on TalkSport is preposterous. And he's cited people like me who have been a major advocate of his over the years, a major supporter of his, because they perceive that one thing has been said. All of a sudden, everything gets up. Then I have to listen to the insulting disposition about how much money I lost, what I am, what I'm not, and everyone's just got to get on with that from Tyson. And there comes a point where people get a bit fed up with it. And so Tyson has made himself fair game for this.
But you're a big boy. You should be able to take it.
I do.
You can't dish it out if you can't take it.
Correct.
And by the way,
so you dish it out, don't you?
Isn't it very? For me, I find it very simplistic. If he's continually getting stick, especially what he got from that idiot Adam Catterall, if he's getting the things that were said about him and so forth, he doesn't have to speak to. He has no obligation to speak to anybody.
And that's fine.
There's a lot of fighters don't even. There's a lot of fighters don't even speak to the press. And the Mal, by the way, who are constant. I mean, there's not one. There's about 3 journalists in there who keep kicking him, and that is what it is. So he doesn't speak to the Mal. That's
Frank,
his choice. By the way,
can I ask you, Frank? Can I ask you?
By the way, the Mal normally get 5 million people.
The Mail's the Mail. This is TalkSport you're on. So, Frank, here's the thing. Does Tyson Fury's bipolar condition affect his mental state when it comes to reacting to criticism?
It's not criticism. It's things he comes out with. He will come out with something. And by the way,
but as Simon Riley just said, sorry to jump in, Frank, but what amazed us was that, and we're not going to get into the TalkSport situation, the Simon Jordan, Jim White situation with Tyson Fury, but not that long ago, before he fought Dillian White, Simon and I waited for him in the England dressing room at Wembley. He came in. We felt we were talking to one of our best pals. He started off, Frank, by telling us how much he loves the show. He then went on to tell us how much he enjoys Simon's take on this, that, and the next. Simon's objectivity. He loved all that. And then Tyson changed. Is it because of this mental state regarding his bipolar condition that has brought about this change?
No, not at all. He's reacted to some of the things that you've been saying.
So the bipolar aspect of things has nothing to do with it then, does it?
Sorry, Jim, because you have a voice on the radio and an opinion, that doesn't mean that, that's all okay. If he takes exception to it, he has a personal choice to whether he wants to continue speaking to you or not.
And that's
fine.
He
chose not to.
And that's fine. It. And that means that on the flip side of that, the alternate view of how his behaviour and the reaction to what he then goes on and says and does is the precinct of people like me or Jim or other people. But you guys take exception to that. But other people can't.
I take exception to the fact that I know him. You don't know him. You met him in the Wembley dressing room. I know him. I deal with him all the time. I know the type of person he is. I know what he's been through. I know seriously what he's been through, some really bad times. And what I say about that is the fact that he's officially diagnosed as being bipolar. So take that into account, all you geniuses who seem to just think you know everything. You don't know. You don't know the background. You don't know the man. And sometimes the things he said, I've cringed at a few times at some of the things he said. But I know what goes down, and I know how it is.
Yeah, but Frank, to jump in here, the fact of the matter, but Frank, the fact that
because I had a brother who went through.
Let me stop right there, because we're down there 10 minutes in. Okay, let's counterpunch this argument. Simon Jordan, Frank Warren. And as you can see, Frank Warren is getting outraged based on what certain people have said about him. Tyson Fury all of a sudden no longer likes Talk Sports simply based on a few comments. Frank Warren says, hey, you should deal with it because he's dealing with a mental illness. Okay. And they're saying, well, wait, you know, he's having thuggish like behavior. Frank's saying, no, he's not. When has he been a thug? I can tell you a lot of times he's been a thug. You know, bare knuckle fighting. Come on, I'll fight you wherever I see you. You know, let's get it on right now, like he used to do with Dillian White and Derek Chisora and a lot of other people that he didn't like or said something about him. Yeah, it can be dangerous. Someone with a bipolar disorder, it's a reason why they don't drink. It's a reason why they don't do drugs, or they shouldn't do drink, because they do get to violent behavior. And we've seen that with Tyson Fury. Come on, kicking a taxi? You're kicking a taxi because you're drunk and you're pissed off? Something you don't supposed to be doing when you're diagnosed as as bipolar? And see, this is what happens with Simon Jordan. Simon Jordan will talk about anybody. You know, he's a journalist. That's what he does. And you know he will be intense and he will concentrate into the issue. You know, and all of a sudden Tyson doesn't like it. And I think what happens with Frank, and this is what I'm seeing with Frank. Frank lost a brother because of that same or similar disorder, some kind of mental illness, right? And he lost that, and I think he's taken that emotion with him when he's taught when you associate that with Tyson Fury, his fighter. Look, Frank Warren's doing his job. He's absolutely doing his job here by defending Tyson Fury. But at the same time, you know, then he says, well, hey, he has a preference to do whatever. Then they asked him, well, does it have anything to do with his bipolar necessarily? And then he's like, well, he has his own mind. Listen, here's the whole take. I got a brother that's bipolar, diagnosed bipolar. I'll talk to him maybe 4 or 5 minutes. But once something clicks or he doesn't like something, he will go into a tangent. He will. But understand, if you're diagnosed with a mental illness, it's your responsibility to take your fucking meds. Counterpunch. So if he's diagnosed, there is no reason that he should be sitting around pretending like he's fine and he's not. Because what I'm saying is, oh, I'm bipolar, so you should give me some slack because I will go off on you. But remember, I'm bipolar. But at the same time, if you're not taking your meds and you are doing things that you don't supposed to do, okay, how can we not hold you accountable? If you know you're supposed to take your meds and you don't, instead you do drugs and you drink and you don't supposed to be doing neither, okay, whose fault is that? At some point, someone has to be held accountable. What his dad did, I do agree with Frank. That really has nothing to do with Tyson Fury, based on what his dad did. But he should have reprimanded his dad. And I think something happened at some point because he didn't headbutt little small Ukrainians anymore. He didn't do that anymore. He didn't get violent. You know what I mean? Just because he was amped up and, you know, tripping out. But again, you know, did Tyson do that? No, Tyson didn't do that. But, you know, him telling, hey, F the belts, I'm coming for his effing heart, F all these Ukrainians, F his whole team, they can all get it and all that. That's acts of violence. That's talks of violence. So, Frank, you can't pretend like that didn't happen. Then if you cared that much about Tyson like you did your brother, since you've been there with your brother, you should advise Tyson Fury to take his fucking meds. So, yeah, Tyson Fury was once cool with True Geordie until True Geordie said something he didn't like. So at what point do you cut this down the middle? Do you draw the line and say, hey, which one is bipolar and we'll give him a pass, or which one him just being an ass? Bars. Which one? Because, you know, because at some point Tyson has to be able to take criticism from any and everyone and not hold account. Because it seems like to me like Tyson Fury holds grudges. You know what I mean? And is that attached to bipolar disorder? Really? You know, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, hey, and Frank's trying to, justify this by a lot of things. But listen, at the end of the day, Tyson Fury has to be able to take criticism. And Frank's saying, hey, you guys should take into account he's just being who he is. Well, when he was doing good things, nobody talked about the bipolarness. When he's doing bad things, oh, it's because of bipolar. No, because as Frank described, bipolar, it's high extremes of emotion, right? He's happy one moment, he's sad the next moment. Right? So, yeah, so it should be all balled into one. So when he is happy and he is charismatic, oh, that's just bipolar too, because that's signs of a bipolar person versus when they flip out and get pissed off and they tell everybody where to go or try to fight somebody. Oh, now that only concerns bipolar at that point. That's not cool. You can't have it. You have to have it all or nothing at all. Okay? Because it's both highs and lows and how your emotion goes. That's bipolar, but it's extremes. It's more like this. This is a normal person's. This is a bipolar person, right? So their levels are going back and forth because their emotions, mentally, something's wrong with them. You know what I mean? They can't do anything. Everything has to be extreme. Okay? That's what it is. So with Simon Jordan saying, hey, yeah, his thuggish attitude, and we're going to talk on it, he has every right to do that. And you don't have to be bipolar to have an opinion. But you guys tell me what you think of this face-to-face back and forth between Frank Bourne and Simon Jordan. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace!